Hey, it looks like we are live. Had a little bit more trouble than I usually do, but hello, everybody. We are going to be going over whatever questions you guys have. I'll be answering the super chats over there on the side. But before I actually get going today, there are a couple of things we want to mention. First, I just checked. Cat has taken 20% off everything in our online store. We've got a link to that below. Make sure my phone is on silent here. So Cat has everything 20% off. So big thanks to Cat for that. Great time to get one of our books, one of her children's books, one of my textbooks, a hat, shirt, whatever you want. We have had a couple people cancel for the Cheyenne, Wyoming event on Saturday. If you are interested, go to the link that we'll have down below or email cat@observatoryproject.com. And for those of you still interested in Observer Ranch, I won't talk about it too much, but there's also information there in the description box below the video. I'm hoping to have things somewhat focused today. And yes, by the way, I wore many of your favorite shirt. It's also my favorite shirt, by the way. We're going to try to hopefully keep this to space weather. The fact that solar maximum is now here, I think we can fairly safely say that. And so space weather, sunspot maximum, and Earth's disaster cycle, if we could keep it to that, that would be a pretty good focus for this. Man, I already see people asking about January 5th. What's going to happen? Nothing. Same thing that happens every year. Yes, we are at perihelion today, just like we are January 4th every single year. People talking about there's some wave that's going to be hitting the solar system. One, no. Two, there's no way that they would actually be able to know that unless they're claiming to literally be psychic or have some kind of a crystal ball. I've run into a couple of those individuals, and that's not exactly how it works. But anyway, yeah, thank you, everyone. I love this shirt too. Yeah. Wow, look at all these people. It's so good to see you guys popping on here. I really do have to do a better job of letting everyone know when this is going to happen. Don't always know when I'm going to get the opportunity, but when I do get the opportunity, I love just jumping in here and being able to come on live and talk to you guys like that. Yes, DH Godzilla live stream is awesome. Somebody's asking for a small recap, please. I don't know what you want a recap of, but like I was saying, we are at sunspot maximum. Space weather is not going back down. If you saw yesterday's Q&A video, we are no longer in the ascending phase. We are pretty much up there at the top here at sunspot maximum, which means the upticks won't look like this anymore. Up and back down, they'll look like this. And then up, we're still here at sunspot maximum. Boom, we're still up here at sunspot maximum. There's an interesting question. Why did I put Observer Ranch where it is? It's one of the best positioned places for everything that's coming. It is far away from the coastline. It is high elevation. There are mountains nearby, and there's a clear path to the plains. The specific place where Observer Ranch is located has a microclimate. When we had this cold wave come in last week, it was -15 in Colorado Springs. 45 minutes away at the ranch, didn't go below zero. One of the reasons for that is because it's surrounded by snow-capped mountains, which just reflect sunlight down into the valley. The little microclimate we have there creates more rain in the rainy parts of the year as well. And so, it's really the perfect place to be. We don't have to worry about volcanoes, seismicity. The water's not going to get here. The main climate change is going to be more rain. If the Earth tilts the way we expect it to tilt, pretty much going to have the same climate, slightly better. I couldn't think of anywhere else. I wouldn't want the ranch to be anywhere else, to be honest with you guys. Ooh, I see a lot of people saying they finally made it to a live show. Well, that's fantastic. Nice to have you guys here. Yeah, can see there's like hundreds of questions, but when the thing scrolls like this, there's no way for me to get to all of those. Anyway, got our first super chat there. Any idea when it will be too late to travel by plane due to high levels of radiation? Um, there have been times in the past couple of years when I would say it's already relatively dangerous to travel by airplane. We are not in that situation at this exact moment, but pretty much anytime the sun ticks up going forward, or when we get back down into sunspot minimum, when the cosmic ray levels are pretty high, I would say that is the case as well. So I would say we're already seeing intermittent periods of that. We've actually seen a couple of peer-reviewed papers in the journals that are talking about how underestimated the radiation dosages are for, mostly talking about pilots and other people who work, as airline personnel, things like that. But for an individual, you know, at the end of the day, sometimes it just takes one cosmic particle to hit a piece of DNA and do some damage. And so there's a little bit of uh, day by day pragmatism, practicality that's needed to be required there. Next question. You showed an area of Knoxville, Tennessee, and upwards into the Cumberland Mountains as a safe point. Sort of. I qualified it very much so. But now I hear you say the Atlantic will break through the Appalachian Mountains. Yes. There are places that the wave is going to hit where I don't think people stand much of any chance. And there are places where the wave will break to that I think that you'll have a chance to actually float away or get to the highest point nearby. That would be like that area, on the western side of the Appalachians and in the highest points of the Appalachians, where people at least have a chance. They do not have a chance to just sit there and let everything go by them, but they would actually have a chance to float away or make things a little bit better. But I much prefer being somewhere the water's not even going to get to, which would be the new Valley of the Sun. Hello, Rob Painless. Good to see you. Thanks for these. Very proud of all you've done for the community. 6-pack of good beer for you. I will take the compliment very much. For those who don't know, I know a lot of you do know, Kat and I have gone pretty clean and stone cold sober here for a while. Neither one of us was ever much of a drunk, but we'd have a drink here or there, especially at some observers events, just to relax and hang out. In our younger years, we used to enjoy a little bit of the Hobbit's leaf, no doubt about it, but that is not the case anymore. We are trying to get every part of our bodies and minds ready for what's about to happen. Something you might want to think about. Does Swarm publish raw data on the magnetic field? Yes, but not in any kind of random or easily usable way. You need special code to translate all the zeros and ones. The level of data, the amount of it requires heavy computing or a supercomputer. It's just not that simple. It'd be nice if they publish data like, here's what the magnetic field strength is this day, this day, this day. They just don't do it like that. And so, unfortunately, it's not really in a readily usable fashion for people like us, which is very unfortunate. Excellent question, though, Christopher. Really appreciate that. That's funny, MGB. Is North Texas a good place to be? Hello, new viewer. No. The water's coming right up through there. The water's going to make it to Canada and the Great Lakes. It's going to get North Texas pretty darn hard. Fridge Chill asks, could the solar kill shot happen in phases, first affecting communities and taking out electricity near the poles and then later near the equator? It's very possible that we could get an event that takes things out regionally, maybe a couple events that take things out regionally, and then there's one that takes out power to the whole globe. That's certainly possible. It's not something I'm counting on, especially with Earth's magnetic field tanking like this and Earth becoming more vulnerable to a solar EMP or a solar kill shot every single day. But, we could see something like the 1859 event where the entire province of Quebec lost power and really nobody else. We could see something like 2003 where many transformers blew in Sweden and Norway and lots of regions there lost power. Something like that, I think nowadays would really wake up the world. We didn't have the same kind of news and social media that we had, now that we, we didn't have that back then. So I think that something like that would really have a significant impact. But yeah, it's very possible it could happen in phases like that. Although, if it did happen in phases like that, there's a very good chance that whatever areas lost power in the more minor event first would come back, and then we'd trudge along a little more, and then another solar blast would happen. It's not like if, say, New Zealand and Canada lose power next week, that they're just going to be without power while the rest of the world goes on for years and until the major solar kill shot. How do I talk to my children about what's coming? I have two young boys and I want to prepare them mentally for what's coming without scaring them. I don't talk to my kids. They are 7, 5, and 2. Um, just trying to get them outside experience with other things as much as possible. Going to be doing a lot of that at Observer Ranch as well. But for the time being, my kids are too young, and I have been very thankful for that because that's something I don't necessarily think about so much. It's unfortunate I can't answer very well every single one you guys have, but your best judgment at this point is going to be as good as anything I can tell you on that front. I know it's interesting. Like, if they're too young, you don't want to tell them because you'll scare them. And then if they're just a little bit too old, they're not going to listen to you anyway, or they're going to be mad at you or think you're crazy. It's like this window that you've got to hit with them unless they happen to discover this on their own. And then it's their own thing and they come to you and ask questions. That's a different story. Eastern Turkey looked safer in your video, correct? In some aspects, yes, there will be, if you live in Turkey, you probably know there's a pretty phenomenal fault line that goes every once in a while there. I think that Turkey's going to see some fantastic earthquakes in this event. Yeah, they might not get as inundated with water. They should be able to see the sun when the solar flash happens, and so that's a concern. All depends on how dependent you are on critical infrastructure in that part of the world at this time. And things of that nature. If you're not all that dependent on it, maybe you don't have as much to worry about. Can you please give your percentage of whether the power will go out during this sunspot maximum? I've said before, I think there's probably about a 20-25% chance. I still think that's probably accurate. Yes, Earth's magnetic field continues tanking. I expected that to happen when I made the prediction. Yes, the sunspot cycle is going slightly higher than predicted. That was also something we factored in. Maybe as high as 30 to 40%, but I still think it's less than 50-50. I do think we're going to make it through this sunspot maximum. Of course, those aren't exactly fantastic chances when the downside is basically the end of the modern world. And yes, of course, when it does happen, all prepping is over. All moving to different locations is over. When it happens, you are where you are, and I hope you're ready. And yeah, in theory, that could happen next week. There's just no way to know. Perkadad asks, it's an interesting name. Do you think Venus entered its current orbit since the last micronova? It's an interesting question. Maybe. I think it's possible that Venus, Earth, and Mars were all much closer to each other in orbit, that they were all habitable, or at least all closer to Earth's temperature. And it's interesting. Venus acts like it has a surplus of energy. Mars acts like it has a deficit of energy. The ancient stories talk about Mars and Venus doing battle in the sky. And what if Mars discharged to Venus? Mars no longer has the electromagnetic power to sustain a magnetic field. Venus took on that power, and Venus now looks like Venus, and Mars now looks like Mars. It's kind of really interesting. That also could have affected Venus's orbit and Venus's rotation, which, by the way, goes the wrong way. The only planet that actually spins the, quote, wrong way. Yeah, good question, though. I wish I knew exactly what happened. I wish I had a time machine to actually see what happened back then. But I find it interesting that they talk about Mars and Venus doing battle in the sky in the ancient stories. And They kind of act like they did battle in Mars discharge to Venus, basically pumped it with juice and lost the juice itself. Good questions right out of the gate here. Steve M says protect your hippocampus with MCT oil. I'm gonna have to look into that one. That sounds interesting. Shane, please watch the playlist. I go over Yellowstone like 5 or 6 different times. The short answer is it's broken. There is no other volcano on Earth, small or super volcano level, that can boast its pressure release, whether it's through geysers, geothermals, quakes. It doesn't have the ability to build up pressure anymore. Pressure comes from underneath and it just lets it go. Yes, there could be an effusive eruption, which is like what happens with Hawaii, where it bubbles up and comes over. But in terms of the big explosive thing that people are worried about from Yellowstone, no, it's broken. Maybe many, many thousands of years into the future, things will change geologically there. But at this point, that is not the case. And again, we go over Yellowstone quite a bit in the playlist. By the way, did you guys know we have an Earth disaster playlist? It's very helpful. You should check it out. How can I bulletproof my off-grid power system, solar power system? You cannot. Don't count on that at all. Do you have any ideas on how observers can establish communication with each other after the event? No. I wonder if the government continues to deficit spend because everything will reset after the event. Yes. It is possible that radios, ham radios, other things like that could work, although the ionosphere is not going to be anything like it is right now. You have to basically relearn on the fly how it all works. And there's a very good chance that all those devices will get fried. And yes, the government is spending and otherwise acting like there's no tomorrow because they know from a certain perspective there kind of isn't. What are your even further predictions for human behavior as the magnetic field weakens even further? Do you think we'll see groups of people regressing into madness? We are already seeing groups of people regressing into madness. But everything from a continued decline in cognition, a continued increase in emotional instability, panic, fear, terror reactions, a continued, and whether or not you believe in religious texts or not, doesn't change the fact that this is proven to be real so far, and it's probably going to continue. The degenerate behavior of individuals, whether that's morally, criminally, sexually, however you want to call it, it's been on the rise. And not just because the media and the government seem to be pushing for this, pushing to normalize the non-traditional person, pushing to normalize broken homes and broken relationships and other things like that. There's an energetic aspect, and I would expect that to continue too. Everybody needs to be strong. How do we know where the safe places are and aren't, please? I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. Son is in Central Oklahoma. One of the best ways is to watch the playlist where I describe where those places are and why those are the safe places. Nashville, Tennessee, you don't want to be in any big city, and the water will get there. Central Oklahoma is going to be inundated by the Gulf of Mexico. Highly recommend you go back through that playlist, which is also listed down there below the video. It answers quite a number of questions. Scrolling. If the crust rotates and Scotland becomes tropical, would it be a good idea to buy a pet monkey? I mean, yeah, there's going to be major problems in Scotland on the way down there. A lot of problems. I don't know if Scotland is a place I would recommend being, but if you are lucky enough to somehow survive and get there, yeah, sure, buy a pet monkey. Why not? Will the solar micronova affect orbits of asteroids in the asteroid belt? Will that be of major concern for those survivors on Earth? Well, if it did affect things in the asteroid belt, it's going to push them out, so further away from Earth. The impactors that happen are from the actual shell that gets blasted off of the sun. That plasma not only congeals and cools and coalesces into impactors, but even bulk plasma coming into Earth's atmosphere is going to have pretty impactful effect, even if it's just from an arc discharge type scenario. If you don't remember Billy's videos, that's where that's coming from. Could currently inactive tectonic plates like that of the Front Range of the Rockies reactivate or move when the crust unlocks from the mantle? Unlikely. There are a lot of modern day inactive faults that probably are not going to be as much of an issue, specifically unless there's major continents banging into one another. But even then, it would mostly be the more coastal range and then new ones popping up or offshooting from existing fault lines like New Madrid, something like that. It's a good question, though. Is the Earth not a giant battery? They need to reconnect the circuit with feet of the ground and intentional resonance to power through the people. Not really sure what that's asking, but yes, Earth does act like a giant battery. It charges up, it discharges. In general, I've considered grounding a pretty good thing, going outside with no shoes, no socks on. Don't know what you mean by to power through the people. Almost sounds like a negative thing there. But yeah, that's one of the reasons why the Earth is going to take an arc discharge on one side and then let one loose on the other side. I guess the one that comes down from the sky will capacitize the planet, and then there's the discharge, the loss of capacitance on the other side. Would a bolted down shark cage and air tanks outlast the initial wave? I don't know. Backside of the Appalachians, should we start our submarine build? I don't know if you'd want to bolt it down, because the water's going to be way over your head. It's going to destroy all your preps. It's going to, don't forget, it's not just water. It's bringing trees with it as well. And so if you can bolt something like that down that can take impact from tree after tree coming with the waves, and which you're sure isn't going to be covered up in mud afterwards, like the Texas rock wall. Yeah, sure, go ahead, but I wouldn't make that bet if I were you. Next question. Does the sun have an impact on the mineral structure of crystals during CMEs? Very possible. And if so, are there ones that are more impacted, changed than others? Almost every crystal has some electromagnetic interaction. In terms of specific of what crystal does what, that's a highly detailed geological chemical question that I don't have the answer to. I do apologize about that, Chris, but some could probably absorb a lot of energy. Others might cause some pretty scary discharges. It's an interesting thought, though. Definitely something to look into. Anything you could say with respect to the Great Lakes region and any potential safe areas within or nearby? There are probably some areas nearby that won't take slosh from the lakes. There are no areas nearby that are going to be nice and warm when the sun takes out power and you're waiting for the Earth to go like this. Most areas around the Great Lakes sustain pretty deadly cold in the wintertime, and that's something to consider. Not to mention there's huge population centers and other things like that. How do I think the moon will behave during the magnetic excursion? I don't know, but Ed Leeds Skånen, the guy who built Coral Castle, says that, since there is a magnetic connection between the Earth and the moon, that when we have our magnetic flip, the moon will come down a little bit in its orbit and then move back out, which, by the way, will very, very much contribute to the waves coming up onto the land. Imagine high and low tides 10 times what they are right now. But in terms of my personal belief and other things like that and other science, I know what Ed Leeds Skånen says, and he seemed to know a thing or two. Canada, 2 Great Lakes, stripped bare, ? Northwest Iowa, ? I'm not exactly sure what the question is there, but I don't know if they'll be stripped bare. I do expect the Gulf of Mexico to run all the way to the Great Lakes and dump into them there. And so yeah, that would be running right over northwestern Iowa. If you haven't checked out the Safe Zones videos, I don't know, maybe I need to do another one. Put it up closer to the top of the playlist, but it's definitely in there. How long from a brown, darkened sun until the micronova? Oh, I don't know, about 3 days of darkness. Something tells me it'll be about 3 days. Does that mean it couldn't be 2? Does that mean it couldn't be 5? No, I don't know that for a fact, but it won't be long. It acts like a pressure trap on the sun, stopping the pressure from actually coming out, which is a thing. Thank you, Phileas. Thank you, Christopher. Do I agree that Greta Thunberg's handlers fear me and my information? No, I think that they have been pretty well assured that they are part of the Great Reset and great misinformation of the population, and they're just trudging right along right there. I don't think they fear much. They're definitely not intelligent enough to understand most of this information. That's for sure. Lisa Frequency, I hope I'll get to do one too, but remember, they already exist. Those videos are in the playlist. Is it going to start tomorrow? No. That's somebody who wasn't here at the start of the video when I told people to stop being scared about January 5th. For those of you who weren't here at the start of the video, stop being scared of January 5th. One, that is not how psychic stuff works. And two, those people are not psychic. There's no giant wave coming through the solar system right now. Could the arc discharge flash boil enough ocean to limit the amount of water flowing inland? No. Would rain flooding be a factor in this event? Yes. The arc discharge doesn't necessarily flash boil water. If you guys remember Billy's experiments, water is attracted to electric current. It will run up against electric current. So when this discharges from the sky, it's going to basically take an enormous portion of the Pacific and bulge it up, and then it's going to come back down and send that wave all the way across the Pacific like that. But that's not going to happen in the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, other places like that. The flash should probably cause a significant increase in the amount of water vapor, but not necessarily from the oceans, and not enough to stop what has every single one of these events been continent-wide tsunamis. Remember, stuff that happened in the last ones is going to happen again now. It is fun to hypothesize and do these things where it's like, oh, well, maybe this could happen and it would change this scenario. But the problem is it didn't happen in the past. The stuff that happened before is going to happen again now. Remember that. Could we get superpowers due to the disaster? I don't know. Did we get superpowers last time? I think there will be DNA changes and other things like that, but we're not going to become Superman. We're not going to become Spider-Man. A lot of the more fantastical things you hear from the Ascension community, well, we're moving into the fifth dimension. Sorry, there's just no reason to believe it. None. Doesn't mean we're not going to have some changes physically, mentally, emotionally. Doesn't mean our DNA might not change, but in terms of some of the stuff I've heard out of there, which is literally like something out of a superhero science fiction movie, the answer is no. It's a good story, though. Do I have an estimate timing on how long we have until disaster strikes? Okay, I'll say it again. Solar micronova and the Earth's magnetic pole shift should probably be in the 2030s or 2040s. The caveat is, with Earth's weakening field, leaving us more and more vulnerable, any given time the sun could throw out something that basically acts like an EMP, throws us back into the Stone Age, and at that point, the disaster has begun. And so that part is really unpredictable. There's absolutely no way to know. And of course, that's the more important thing. When are we completely on our own? Is there a geosynchronous orbit on the dark side of the Earth to shield from the micronova? No, there's not. I've seen that question before, and it's a good thought, but no. Um, Especially if you know anything about the magnetotail being right behind the Earth, which is the only place you could, not get the flash, is where that energy comes around the field and then shoots out the back. Earth's magnetotail is one of the most violent things nearby us in space. Well, we need hair products during the micronova, or will hair stick up by itself static wise? It's a hilarious thing to put in a comment there, Neil. I'm going to go with no hair products needed. Static electricity will do. Don't quote me. Multiple times I've seen you reference the auroral L shells being compressed down to a possible ground plane discharge. I would love to learn more about this and think the Nile Valley was cut this way. It's very possible it was cut that way. This is how they think magnetar discharges work. Essentially, if you know what those shells look like, if here's the Earth, these shells are coming on the side. If you compress them down and you surge electricity through it, eventually it's going to find it more convenient to just discharge down into the ground rather than continue along the magnetic field. It's possible Valles Marineris on Mars was created that way. It's possible the Grand Canyon was created that way. Robert Schoch certainly thinks that we got discharges in Egypt. Think about the green glass in the Sahara, other things like that. What's my position on Proto-Saturn? I don't really have one. It's a fun story. The problem is that a lot of that relies on an extrapolation from the polar alignment. The problem with the polar alignment is it's drawn everywhere all over the world. And if it was a polar alignment, only half the planet would be able to see it. Really cool stuff there. Probably some truth in some of those stories. But this thing you heard on the Thunderbolts channel is probably not completely correct. Is there a map showing the locations of the new poles in the equator? Yeah, in the disaster playlist. I am going to make you go back and watch that in order to find it, because especially because it's in the first video of the disaster playlist, Duskland Arts. Yes, I will make you go watch that. Yes, there is a map showing the new locations of everything. You're welcome. Flowing Brook. Cool name. Scrolling. What happens to satellites around the Earth? Melt, crash to Earth, nothing? Well, definitely not nothing. They'll probably all fry. Some will crash into each other. Most will just stop working and then eventually lose altitude, lose orbit, and burn up in the atmosphere. Of course, there's other impacts from having that happen in terms of human technology, but yeah, I expect that virtually every satellite will be lost in the initial solar EMP and certainly in the micronova. Do I think Biden is in the White House? Yes, putzing around, not knowing where he is most of the time. I am building a house. What's best, concrete block or concrete panels or hempcrete? I refuse to build a wood stick house. I don't really blame you, but I prefer hempcrete and aircrete over, rebar enforced concrete or cement. If you can do the concrete blocks or the concrete panels and not put metal in there, I guess that's probably just as good. I do like hempcrete. I do like aircrete. There are ways to make wooden homes pretty darn strong. Of course, the best of all worlds would be to make something out of stone or brick, but who does that anymore? Would a Faraday cage protect electronics? Against a lesser solar event, yes. Against a solar micronova, probably not. Like I said, Faraday cage, that's more for like a discharge from above, not necessarily induced current coming in from the side. I think a lot of them are going to melt in the big events, cause electric arcing inside of them. Something insulative like plastic. I'm going to say it again. I'm a bigger fan of that than I am metal. So glad to catch you live. Followed you for 9 years going on 10. Thank you for what you do. Thank you very much for the comment there. Oh, here's an interesting question. If the aliens land just before the events and offer a lift, would you take it? I know I might get some crap for this. At this point, if aliens land in your yard and say, we have chosen your family to save from this coming disaster, or we have chosen your children to save from this coming disaster, believe them. If aliens landed on my front yard and were like, we are taking you and your family to a safe planet because this one's in big trouble, I'm going to be like, all right, kids, grab your stuff, let's go. Because if they had something nefarious in mind, like they were going to take us up and kill us, they wouldn't do that. They would just wait for the earth and the sun to do it themselves, or trust in our elites and our government to do it. Designing an SO community app with chat plus group chat, and we'll be emailing the prototype to Ben. Drop a yes in the chat if you will use it. Sounds cool. Will there be a dating function? I don't like long walks in the park. I do like steak dinners. I like going to the gym. 300 feet above sea level, enough to survive the waves, question mark. It all depends on where you are. All depends on where you are. 300 feet above sea level, but 1,000 miles away from the ocean is very different than 300 feet above sea level, 10 miles from the ocean. There's also the factor of which way the ocean is going to be sloshing, which you can learn in the disaster playlist. I wish I could just like give you a number like 1,500 feet, like 800 meters, and that it's different everywhere in the world. And don't forget, land is going to be rising, land is going to be falling. There's no great guide. There's no one answer that can fit everywhere across the world when it comes to stuff like this. Thank you, ambiguity. Somebody asked if there's PDF versions of our books. Yes, not down below, but if you go to the morning news and you look in the description box, underneath the Shopify store, there's the PDF store. It's a Podia store, and you can get the PDFs there. Will magnets stop working? Either that or they'll become super magnets. Interesting commentary. Steve M., you just going to post the same thing over and over again? I don't even know what those 4 words mean put together like that. Could you maybe expound so somebody, probably not me, so that somebody could actually try to answer your question? Move my houseboat to my backyard. I like it. Good call. How will Iowa fare? Probably not very well. Please go watch the playlist. I didn't make it for fun. Ever got a message to go east? Question mark. I don't know what that means, but no, me and the eastern part of the country are done. Steve M., are you seriously just going to post those same 4 words together? Expound on what you're asking so that somebody has a chance to answer your question. Utilize the rules of the English language, grammar, be descriptive, other things like that. How do I think the governments will respond over the next 20 years as this unfolds? Not very favorably to us civilians. That's for sure. After watching what happened the last 3 years and seeing what they're trying to do with climate and discussions of talk of climate lockdowns and other things like that, I don't think they're done screwing with us at all, unfortunately. Do I know of an SO group in the Appalachian Mountains? 1, no. 2, they shouldn't be there. Oh, somebody asked something about Michael Steinbacher. Was he on to? He was on to many big things before he passed. He definitely was suffering though before he died. He had cancer pretty bad. CBD kept him going for a while, but I spent quite a bit of time with Michael Steinbacher before he died, and he had fantastic ideas, but he never had any certainty. He was always like, they say it's answer A. Thunderbolts say it's answer B. I'm like, well, what about option C, D, E, and F? And I always thought that made him one of the smartest individuals in that group. Notice the European safe zone changed on your previous vid from Mid-Pyrenees, France to Northern Alps. Why the changes? When it comes to Europe, it's a lot just a guess. I really don't like Europe in terms of this entire event, especially because Campy Fleggery is going to go off. The Mediterranean's going to slosh. Europe in general is exceptionally highly populated. It gets really cold in places in the wintertime, which is a bad thing without power. I'd rather be in the new Valley of the Sun, put it that way. Buy some vitamin C. Yes, vitamin C is quite good for you. Thank you, Jessica. Can you upload a file of the SO theme music by Nemesis? We can use it as a ringback tone? No, you would have to ask him. I don't own it. What happens if you're outside when a micronova hits? Is it going to be like a nuclear bomb? If you are on the side of the planet where the flash is, yeah, there's a very good chance that there's burning that takes place. If you are standing underneath the arc discharge when the shell compresses Earth's L shells, there's going to be nothing of you left. Otherwise, when the sun is like that, right during the micronova, there's probably going to be higher cosmic radiation. Whether or not it's going to be deadly at your part of the world will all just depend on where in the world you are. One thing I can say is this has happened many, many, many times before, and it never killed the whole world. So there's that to think about. And everything is susceptible to radiation. Everything. Earthship homes. These are my thoughts. Provided you don't do it in a place like Florida or right on the coast. What's the chance of a micronova delay for 1,000 years? I'm not Jesus. I don't have a crystal ball. All I can do is go on math of how things are going, how much I see the planets changing, how much I see the magnetic field changing, and the way the people in charge are acting. None of it says we have 1,000 years left. Absolutely none of it. And even if there was a slight hint like, ooh, it could be possible, imagine putting all your eggs in that basket. Not a good idea. What are the chances? Sorry. Scrolling. What are the chances after the magnetic flip we will have more than 2 poles? In the past, we had up to 6 at one time in history. No, not quite. So I hear people talk about, there's going to be a quadrupole, an octopole, this, that. That's not exactly the case. Right now, there is one magnetic north, one magnetic south, but there are also hot spots around them, as there are with any dipole magnet. That's what they're talking about with the quadrupole. When they say, like at one point in history, we had this pole here, but it also looks like we had this pole here. They're actually separated by a couple thousand years. They're detecting the movement of the pole. They're not actually detecting multiple poles in the way most people are thinking about it when they think of a quadrupole or other things like that. Good question, though. Chan Thomas's book at the end talked of ETs coming during every cataclysm. Yep. Thousands of ships and a mass evacuation. Very possible. Why would the CIA leave this part out when they declassified it? I don't know. It's in his 1990s version of the book too, by the way, which it's interesting. He wrote that version in the 60s. He wrote another one like 15, 20 years later. And he also wrote a final version of it in the early 90s. And it finally blamed the sun. After 40 years of talking about the same thing, he finally figured out it was the sun. Chan Thomas also made a significant number of mistakes in his books, which I've gone over in the videos. If we get a break in the super chats, maybe I'll go over it. Are UFOs a la Vril fast enough to avoid the nova? If it's actually an alien civilization from some star far away, there's not a whole lot I would put past them. Um, they also haven't taken any steps so far to help us get out of this controlled situation. They haven't started evacuating people. I think it's very possible that they see this as a planetary test. They see this as a testing ground planet or a nursery where species need to grow up. Um, I'm not saying they're not going to help us, but I don't know how much they're going to help us, and I'm not counting on any of it. Good question, though. Thank you, Todd. Patrick says, how will metal fillings and teeth react to micronova? How about graphene oxide in the body reacting? I don't know. I don't have exact answers. If you are in an area that takes a really strong induction, anything metal potentially could arc or melt. Doesn't mean it's going to. Don't forget the body has its own energy field, which you can enhance with positive thinking, meditation, good diet, good physical well-being, other things like that. Highly recommend it. Graphene oxide. It's obviously a vaccine question. Put it this way. It seems like there is nothing good about that jab. And no, I don't think graphene oxide is a good thing to have in your body if the sun is really surging electric currents through the atmosphere and the ground and us. Exactly what that looks like, I don't know, but wouldn't be my first choice, put it that way. Thank you, Joe. How far West Texas would I have to go to avoid the slosh? All the way. Put it that way. All the way. Which basically puts you in El Paso, which has its ups and its downs. Hope that answers your question. Thank you for your great work. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. We got another one I skipped over right there. Enhance. I went back up to the Peak District again, caving. I have found some like-minded people and have agreed to start loading up a specific cave with supplies. Good for you, Paul. Community is key. And very happy for you, and I'm sure other observers are as well. Hopefully it's inspiration for others to get on the same kind of idea. I've certainly had a lot of emails the last couple of days about Observer Ranch. What's my opinion on Q? Are there any conspiracies I believe? I believe lots of conspiracies. I don't have an opinion on Q. I certainly thought that some of the things being posted were interesting. Of course, the big predictions, the big claims never turned out to be true. I don't know who it is. I don't know the purpose. I don't have much of an opinion on Q, but yeah, there's lots of conspiracies that are real. Like here's one. The people in charge of this planet absolutely believe in Satan, karmic retribution, other things like that. These people are not cool. Not cool. And they're trying to get as many people in the world to act that way as possible. I love how Noah's Ark matches up with the timeline. Yes, it does. I'm kind of a fan of Noah. That's why I named one of my sons Noah. And the other one is named Adam. And my daughter is named Kira. Ki being Egyptian for earth, Ra being the god of the sun. And in Sanskrit, Kira is beam of sunlight. Noah also means restful, and his middle name is Athen. It's the anglicized version of Aten. Restful, face of the sun. I named my son after a potential coming grand solar minimum. Adam's middle name is Seth, by the way, if any of you guys can translate that one. You guys liking this discussion about what I name my kids? I'm kind of fond of them. See Wyoming? I will see you in Cheyenne. I'm excited for it. Susie Rose Finlay. I can imagine feeling alone in the Vegas area. I can also imagine being inspired to get out of the Vegas area before any of this happens. Echo, that's a good question. Why do they want people to act like them when they know this is going to happen? They can actually take and use the energy from people who are acting evil, acting negatively, acting darkly. I know this is going to sound crazy, but just the way that there are magnetic personalities, the way positivity can be contagious to other people or negativity, these energy exchanges between people and these energy outputs from people are real. They can use dark, negative, evil stuff like that. Don't give them a dime. You and yours are so amazing. Thank you, Laura. Live in southern Alberta, small town of Colehurst with an elevation of 922 meters. Do we move? Then we're in Canada, or do we build a boat? Um, I kind of like southern Alberta. A lot of it would depend on how close to the mountains you are. And, I'm not going to pull up the map right now, but, there are areas there that can survive. Your biggest thing is, make sure you have something like a root cellar or a well-insulated basement or a bunker where you can actually use geothermal heat in the wintertime, unless you are some kind of Eskimo. Just prepare to potentially be without power for years before everything flips over, in which case you got some winters to deal with, don't you? Other than that, not a terrible area to be in. What triggered your hyperthymesia? Was born with it. If something did trigger it, I have absolutely no idea what it was, but I've had it for as long as I can remember. Geologic landforms spiral one way around Turkey's Lake Tuz and the Aegean Sea. Spirals are in the opposite direction around Lake Victoria, Africa. That's why I assume the Nile's a discharge scar. I didn't disagree with you before, and I'm not going to disagree with you now. It's very possible that a lot of geological formations on this planet are arc discharge scars. I would never dream of trying to tell someone that's crazy, because I believe it to be the case here, at Mars, and other places. Have you seen the unclassified docs about remote viewing research? They saw common things on the other side, so to speak. I have seen a lot of things about remote viewing. I have watched people remote view. I've had somebody try to teach me how to remote view. That didn't go well. I have seen some people who kind of impress me, and I've seen others where I'm like, you have no idea what you're doing. You're just making stuff up. I'm sure there is something deep within that realm that is real. I just couldn't tell you what it is, unfortunately. Serendipity says Earth, rising, falling, some ideas where, question mark. I can choose between Sardinia and Germany. Maybe Sardinia is going to rise instead of being wiped out by the tsunami of Campi Flegrei. Campi Flegrei is pretty terrifying for Sardinia, for Sicily, for all of Italy, for most of Europe, actually. If you got somewhere in Germany that's not too populated, if you can get yourself in a situation where you can handle cold winters, if you don't need electricity, and if you can stock up on enough supplies, go for it. Wish you the best of luck. But no, Sardinia is not going to be safe if Campi Flegrei goes off. Fun thought, though. Thank you, Svavar. I hope that's how you pronounce that. Is South Central PA safe? No. If we climb the mountains, 1,000 in the valleys, water's going to get there. I don't love the winters there. I guess South Central PA has some areas that aren't terribly populated. It's going to be a lot of mud, a lot of water, a lot of snow in the wintertime. It's possible some people will survive there. It's possible nobody will survive there as well. Could the North American glacial lakes break through? Maybe. Maybe. The lakes are definitely going to slosh around. More so on the slosh back than on the initial inertial wave because of the depth, except maybe Lake Superior. What a beast that thing is. Will the ranch be open to working with outsiders after the event? Want to move to the area soon and hope to have a community pre and post event. Maybe. If the event goes down and you just kind of show up desperate, there's a chance we're just going to eat you. We're certainly not going to be eager to take on burdens, that's for sure. If you definitely want to be part of the ranch, be part of the ranch. Send me an email down there. Yeah, it's tough. I hate to give that bad news, but no, we are not exactly going to be having an open door policy to whoever after bad things happen. You guys are getting a lot of information. You guys are getting a lot of heads up that the vast majority of humans are not getting. You better be doing something about it right now. Seriously. And I hate to be like the kick in the face hard ass about it, but seriously, if you're taking in all this information, you know what a heads up you're getting in front of everybody else, and you're not doing anything, good luck. Cat's going to be acting like a rooftop Korean, just hoping you come up on the ranch. And by the way, Cat's guns are cooler than mine. Her Freedom FX9 is so baller. Anyway, Ben, bought your book, Next End of the World. Each time I read it, I get new insights. I hear that a lot. Like pulling pieces of a string, live in the UK and preparing like crazy. Thanks for what you do. Mike B, thank you. And thank you for that comment. I get that about Next End of the World, Weatherman's Guide to the Sun, and the supplement. Every time somebody reads it, doesn't matter how many times they read it, they come away with something new, which I think is really cool. Ireland, question mark. Canary Islands, question mark. I'm presuming you're asking if those are safe, and the answer is no and no. Ireland, for all of the reasons we've said before, including in the last Q&A, in case you missed it, and the Canary Islands, because I honestly think they're going under the water. I think the volcanoes are going to destroy those islands, and then what's left of them is going to slide into the water. I would not want to be there in the Canary Islands. Laura says, eat you. Haha. Well, I don't know. You know, it's really a shame that this vaccine thing came out, because I try to only eat organic. And now the vast majority of people are genetically modified. So maybe we won't be eating as many as we would have otherwise done in that situation. Somebody asked, what about the Big Burp? There's going to be an update on that very soon. For those who don't know, we had to wait 2 months for a part. Then we had to wait 2 months because we lost our spot in the shop while we waited for that part to arrive. The part didn't work. We had to send it back. It's been about another month and a half. Rocky was out of town for most of the last couple of weeks with his family. He just got back and said the part has arrived back to us. So we're going to stick it in there and see how that works. Rocky hopes to be driving Big Burp around the city later this month. To be honest, I hope that is the case as well. Try 4CE1. Atlantic, nothing. The Atlantic is going to attack the Americas. You learn how to use stick shift yet? Thanks for everything you're doing. No, I didn't learn how to use stick shift yet. And interestingly, I used to know how to do it. And then I didn't do it for 20 years. And last time I tried, wasn't like I couldn't do it, but it was like, no, I prefer automatic. Do planetary alignments create a larger chance for Earth-facing CMEs? Yes, they create more CMEs in general. Mercury, Venus together, Mercury, Earth, Mars and Earth, Jupiter's involved. Yes, oftentimes though, Saturn and Venus aligning causes a quieting effect. If you go on my channel and you find the playlist, The Planets and the Sun, some good information on that stuff there. Love your Q&A. Yes, please, a more detailed video on safe zones. Maybe include more details about closest zone near Denmark, Norway, Sweden, when power goes. Again, I don't love any of those places. Too high population density, too cold in the winter. And most of you guys are reliant on electricity as well, and you guys are not at a favorable geomagnetic latitude there. You have so much working against you that other parts in the world doesn't have working against it in this situation, which I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm also not going to sit here and lie to you. 6,000 feet level off-grid property in the mountains of the Spring Mountain Range outside Las Vegas. Would this work? In theory, have you tried? I mean, are you saying you live off-grid right now? Fascinating job you're doing being online if that is the case. But if you haven't lived off-grid before, don't romanticize this. It's not easy. Yeah, there's some cool stuff about it, but holy cow, is it hard. You think it's slave work, working a 9 to 5 in some office somewhere? Try to start an off-grid community, see how many hours a day you're working. Yeah, Susie, in theory, that could work to a degree. You still have to worry about the cold, other things like that. All right, where are we here? Oh my, I hadn't thought of the contaminated meat. I know, Laura, right? I mean, I don't love the idea of cannibalism, but I was like, man, when all the food goes, at least there's going to be lots of food walking around. And then the jab. Kidding, half kidding ish. What about the Great Lakes? Slosh, slosh, slosh. Wintertime, very cold, no power. Yes, it's possible some people will be able to make it there. Much, much better idea to be somewhere else. You have inspired me. I now have 2 PT sessions a week. There you go. I have replaced my metal fillings with composite bonding. Heck yeah, buddy. I have my cave. I just need to know when to go. I'm 3 hours away and have 3 little girls. Oof. I'd like to think that I'd be able to give warning. The problem is if it's like right on the edge, like if it's like an X15, X20, and we know there's a coronal hole stream that's going to be impacting right before that, it's going to be hard for me to say, yes, definitively go, run for the mountains now. Because even then, it's only going to, I mean, like, what do you guys want? Like, if it's in my head, like, oh, shoot, we are at like 50-50, this is it. Do you want me to like tell you that? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's in your heads, things like that. I mean, if there's a solar event and I'm like, oh, there's like a 1 in 10 chance this could be it. Or like there's an 80%, like where's that level where I tell you guys, this could be a big deal? And will you listen to the caveat that like, hey, look, I'm not saying 100%. If you end up having to drive home with your head between your legs in 2 days, like, are you going to hate me? Fun position I'm in, aren't? Anyway, I'll do my best, promise. What about the mountains in Northern California? California is one of my prime areas for sinkage. So whatever altitude or elevation you would be at there, probably not going to stay that way. I don't like California in general. Is what it is. Holy cow. All right, I got a lot of catching up to do here. Okay. I have an ex-husband in Lebanon. Would that be a good place? No. I don't even know where to begin with that one. At least you've already had the major fertilizer explosion there. Yes, I agree. You learn something new each time you reread the books. Preparing and deciding where to go. Live in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay, more ready than 6 months ago. Keep going, Star. Lebanon is too close to the water, by the way. It's too populated. You don't want to be in a big city. What about the ranch as a rendezvous meeting point like we had in the past? Looking forward to Saturday. I live just a few blocks from the park. Well, that's awesome. Rendezvous meeting point like we had in the past. I don't know what that means, like we had in the past, but if you just show up at the ranch after the world ends, it might not go so well. And no, I don't want to make it a rendezvous meeting point. Bad idea for a number of reasons. Can we currently larger clumps, impactors type remnants from the previous micronova in our solar system? It's possible that a lot of the comets, a lot of the asteroids, the asteroid belt, even the sparse material out there that they call the Oort cloud, the Kuiper belt, things like that, the trans-Neptunian objects. It's possible a lot of that is not what they say it is, left over from the solar system formation, but those are the leftovers from previous micronova events. No way to know. Tennessee, please. Is there a question in there? Are you asking if Tennessee is safe? No. As we mentioned at the start of the program, the water's going to get there. You don't want to be in one of the big cities. It is safe in the sense that you are not right on the coastline, so it should be more like a fast rising high tide. And if you have something where you can float away, you have a chance to survive. It's not exactly a great plan in my book because all your preps are going to be left behind. Planet Tiamat, the water planet, the remnants of which make up the asteroid belt. We don't know that. It's one of the better theories, but we don't know that. The cause of the 40 days of rain in the Bible story, how does that fit without cyclic sun weather history? Fit in without cyclic sun weather history. It's a nice thought. We don't know for a fact that that is the case. We know it's not there now. And the 40 days of rain, that could be, that's something like that is what I would expect after the micronova. So a lot of hydrogen, a lot of oxygen at the sun already, and tons, like every nova we see out in space, we see tons of hydrogen, we see tons of oxygen, we see tons of silicon as well, a number of other things. But the hydrogen is also going to be combining with the upper layers of the atmosphere, specifically of the ozone. It's going to be quite a rainy place for quite some time. Is there a UK prepper group out there? Probably. I don't know about them. And again, I don't have any good advice for anybody in the UK. Will the Earth's axis change from 23 degrees? Well, Earth's going to tilt 90 degrees, but I don't know about its axial tilt. There's discussion of golden ages in the past where we wouldn't have had any tilt. It's just there's basically no seasons. I'd kind of like to live in that scenario. Excellent question, Brandon Green. There's just no way to know. It's much easier to know that there's a tilting over of the planet than where things end up in terms of the axis. How will we fare in Nunavut, Canada with the big wave? Possible you'll be okay there. The slosh back from the Arctic is going to be pretty brutal. And then, of course, there's the how well can you live without power in that part of Canada for potentially up to a decade. Good news is you don't have to worry about hordes of zombies from cities coming after you. But yeah, I would say that it's the slosh back from the Arctic you'd have to worry about more. Nunavut's a big place, and so it would depend on where you are in there. You'd have to do a little bit of, looking at the geography, looking at your elevation, other things like that. In addition to that, can I handle the cold question? It's the first one I've ever got from that part of Canada, by the way. How safe or unsafe is the southwest corner of Colorado going to be? I live about 45 miles south of Durango, Colorado, and New Mexico. Not a terrible place to be. It's got the same water woes as many other parts of the West in the summertime. And really the only part of the West that is going to see major relief from that as the jet streams change is the eastern range, right along the edge of the Rockies. Do I think that it's going to be possible to survive around Durango and around Four Corners? Absolutely, especially if you get lucky enough to have a water source afterwards. Won't be as terribly cold as some of the other places. I prefer the New Valley of the Sun, but you're kind of New Valley of the Sun adjacent, if I can put it that way. I hope that answers your question, Michelle. Thanks for your excellent vids. My family is as ready as possible, just waiting for the wild ride. Kat and Kent, thank you very much. Best of luck. Scrolled too far. Scrolled too far. Have I ever looked into the Tychos model of the solar system? I have. I think it's okay. Um, I like the NICE model or the NICE model, however they pronounce that. Um, I like that a lot, actually. It's not that it's a bad question. It's just that it's never been my focus. I've never spent more than a couple minutes really thinking about it. Um, is what it is. Different tribes and mountain men used to meet up and trade wares and ideas in central location once a year. That's what I meant about the rendezvous point. I know what you meant. And, 10 years after the disaster, 20 years after the disaster, when there's people I've seen, other communities I've interacted with, fine. Trust is going to be like this afterwards. I don't know how desperate they are. I don't know what kind of moral individual they are. I don't know if they are going to lull us into a sense of safety and have 50 of their friends out there waiting to shoot us as we come. Trust is going to need to be built after that. From that perspective and what you're talking about, yeah, down the line, after that is built, I do think things like that are a good idea. But setting that up beforehand and not knowing what kind of people are going to be showing up, it's probably a no from me. Is Juneau, Alaska safe in your opinion? I think it will be after the slosh at least and becomes warmer. Yeah. Big problems there are major earthquakes, major chance of land subsidence, depending on, being up there at the corner, or I don't know. How do you guys see this on your thing? Am I flipped around? The corners of the Pacific where water can be funneled, I do think there's going to be that massive wave from the discharge moving the water. And so a place like that, or a place like Japan, or a place like Kamchatka, you can't just look at how the earth is going to tilt. You have to look at what's going to happen in the Pacific and the water that's going to be coming that way. I do think we're going to get all the volcanoes from the Aleutians, all the volcanoes up and down the coast like that. And then, of course, there's the idea of, are you going to survive there without power for potentially a decade? If you do survive all of that, somehow water doesn't get you, somehow the land doesn't subside, you get away without major earthquakes. Yes, Alaska will be in a much prettier place after the shift. It's a lot to go through beforehand, that's for sure. But if you are truly an Alaska lady and you can handle it up there with nothing, maybe you got a good shot. Hello again, Paul. Last point, if I email you about a Discord server I want to create for SO, would I promote? We could have channels for... Dude, I hate Discord. I find it to be the most unnecessarily complex thing I've ever seen. Like, there's 1,000 ways they could have built that to be easier and friendly. I'm not saying I won't promote it, but there are so many people who are asking me, like, Ben, like, if I do this, if I make this Discord thing, if I make this app, if I make this messaging group, I mean, I've got hundreds of these messages all the time. Where do I start? How do I pick one over the other? It's a tough question. You could have channels for people in different countries. I like my idea from before of just spamming my Facebook page and just saying, hey, I'm from this part of the world. Are there any other observers there? You do that day in and day out, you're going to get some hits. Is there any information source to learn the mechanics of what land will rise and where it will sink? There's no certainty. Rather go to the highlands of Spain, Turkey. The LLSVPs should, in theory, tell us a little bit about which areas are more likely to rise or fall. But again, a lot of it is guesswork. A lot of it is starting to happen now. So the East African Rift, probably going to fall. Parts of the Atlantic, probably going to rise. Parts of the Central Pacific, probably going to fall. Areas where there's powerful fault lines right now, probably going to fall. I think there's a good chance for places like New Zealand to rise back up, not without Taupo going off, but still. Laura, I'm definitely going with the aliens. Yes, go with the aliens if they show up. Where can I get a good lightning rod? I don't know, Laura. Good question. All right. Well, If I missed your question because it appears it's cut off some of these things from me, please email me. How about North Idaho? Yes. If you can survive the cold, if you're not by too many other people, if you can hack it. Are you guys noticing I'm giving the same answers to pretty much all these questions? Just take what I said before and think about your location. Think about being without power for a decade. Think about the population density near you. Think about the natural resources near you, things like that. Thank you, Van. Jay, that's funny. Yes. I want everyone to know that Mav, aka Gene, was brought up on fraud charges a decade ago, and that this thing he's saying about the pole shift coming, it's almost here. He's done that 10 times in the last decade. He's been right 0 times. And his science is terrible. And he doesn't actually have an observatory. Literally everything about it is a lie. How likely do I think Taupo supervolcano will blow? Highly likely. Do I think it's more likely to be other nearby volcanoes? No. I think that you'll be astounded at how many volcanoes. It's like, which volcanoes aren't going to go off in this event? But Taupo really scares the bejesus out of me. By the way, if you did a super chat and the thing timed out and I wouldn't let me scroll back to you, send me an email. Let me know that you did the super chat. I'll go in and check and make sure, but I'll answer your question if you email me with that. I am trying to get to everybody here. Exposing lies. Your mom's a charlatan. She also likes my channel. How bad for Belgium? Dano, go watch the playlist. I talk about Yellowstone like 6 times in the playlist. I also talked about it earlier in this video. Guys, I'm seeing a lot of this. What about this part of the world? What about that part of the world? One, go watch the playlist. Look at the safe zones. 2, think about living in that area without power for potentially 10 years before the major things go. And is the weather going to kill you? Are you too close to a populated area? Things like that. A lot of this, like, I get it. You want somebody who does this every single day to give you an answer. A lot of your answers you can come up with yourself if you think, if you do the homework, things like that. I want to teach you to fish, not just hand you a fish, which is why I made the playlist. Can humans be eaten? Helios, good question. It was a much bigger yes before the vaccine, put it that way. Thank you, Carl. Would love it if you guys could hit the like button. It's one of the ways they decide how many other observers they actually send this out to. And I do think it would be good if most observers see that. Love you too, Doran. Clown. What will happen to animal life for hunting? Some of it will survive. A lot of it's going to be under the same kind of stresses as everything else. Don't forget, in every single one of these magnetic excursions, the climate changes rapidly. It's going to affect the animal kingdom. There's an increased radiation. It's going to affect the animal kingdom. Migrations are going to be affected because the magnetic poles are moving, and that's going to affect the food chain top to bottom. And so there is zero evidence that all animal life ever disappeared or anything even remotely close to that, but it will be impacted negatively for sure. Ralph, thank you so much. Appreciate your support. Really do. Thank you. Amanda, I don't know if that's Amanda Galena or Jelena, but I know, right? So many questions answered already. Crust melting due to induced current. more where the crust meets the mantle, which is why it then slips off. Yes, Scott, the Andromeda current sheet is too far away to be a factor. I believe I answered your email when you sent that to me before. Huh, I can hide people on the channel. That's funny. All right, did I miss one there? Oh, there you are. Neil says I can borrow his hair gel and pet monkey anytime. That is such a relief. One less thing I have to worry about. Okay, don't need hair gel. Don't need pet monkey. We're good. If you had kids ages 17, 15, 13, and you expect this in the late 2030s, would you let your kids go away to college? I can't sit here and even tell you I know for a fact what I would do with my own kids, let alone me sit here and think I had the audacity to tell you what's best for your children. I've talked to a lot of people who are having those questions, who are in that situation, and I just don't know. You can't live their life for them. You can't discount the fact that, let's say they're supposed to go to college in 2032. What if it's 2049 when this thing happens? They'll be in their late 30s, 40s, something like that. You have my heart. Put it that way. You're in a tough position. I think I'm going to be in that tough position someday, and I hope I have more profound ideas of how to deal with it by then. What'll be the best way to die? Asking for a friend. In whatever manner you see fit. For me, that's none. Thank you for everything you do. Lived off the grid for 15 years, most as a single mom. So you know it's no picnic. Okay, Susie, that kind of puts your previous question into perspective there. Your situation seems workable. You've probably dealt with cold before. I'd say if you're far enough away from the population, you've got as good a shot as anyone. You certainly have the experience to merit my saying so. Skip one there. Thank you, Kenny. Appreciate it. I see you a lot here, buddy. Thank you. Every search I do for New Valley of the Sun leads to real estate ads. Can you tell me exactly where the region is? Yes, it's on the eastern range of the Rockies, starting at the Palmer Ridge in between Denver and Colorado Springs, running down through Colorado Springs, past Trinidad, past Los Alamos, Albuquerque, past the Sierra Diablo Mountains, where Jeff Bezos is building his bug out location, and into the mountains of Mexico. Hopefully that helps. And no, I don't think you can just do an internet search for New Valley of the Sun. I made it up. Left me a message on Facebook. Did you answer questions about nuclear reactors going critical? You know, some probably will, and you don't want to be too close to them. A lot of them are going to end up getting swamped by tsunamis, covered in mud. I'm also a big believer in Galen Windsor, the nuclear scare scam. Yes, living right next to a place like Chernobyl or Fukushima wouldn't be fantastic, but you know what Fukushima looks like now? Do you know what Chernobyl looks like now? Unless you are directly and massively dosed, don't worry so much. Look up Galen Windsor, the nuclear scare scam. And when it comes to nuclear bombs and things like that, they're not going to be triggered to go off. They will be permanently disabled in their electronics. And yeah, you don't want to go breaking into one, but in general, don't live too close to the reactors, but in general, they're not going to poison the whole world, especially not with the amount of rain that's going to be coming down. Stock up on iodine or iodized salt. That'll work as well. Why do I dismiss Zarkova's double dynamo model of near zero solar magnetic field in 2033? Because she said it was going to happen this cycle, and she said it was going to happen in the cycle before. And I told her exactly why it wasn't going to happen, because you have to look at the solar polar fields. And she's like, no, but my math. And we had several email exchanges back and forth. Johnny, you really got me on this one. Zarkova ignored every email I sent her, everything about how everyone models the sunspot cycle. And she was like, Ben, you are so wrong. You are terrible at this. The sun's going to have no sunspots in cycle 25. And look at what we got. She doesn't have a damn clue what she's talking about. Zero. End of story. I am so sick of Valentina Zarkova. I gave her everything she needed. Showed her the papers, told her why. How she could have sustained this utter failure in predicting solar cycle 25 and still be running her mouth about next sunspot cycle is baffling to me. What a clown. There will be no judging what the next sunspot cycle is going to do until we get to the descending phase of this sunspot cycle and we look at the solar polar magnetic field strength. You guys tell I'm energized right now. There is no predicted sunspot cycle until we see the solar polar magnetic fields as we're on the decline. End of story. Eight hours south of Brisbane, 8 hours north of Sydney, an hour inland and about 1,000 meters up. Does this sound somewhat safe? Maybe. Maybe. The water might get to you. The people might get to you. Probably won't die of cold. But I imagine it might get kind of hot there. It's possible. It's possible you'll be okay there. I do know that most people in the know in Australia are picking a place like what you just described to bug out to. So you're either going to have lots of friends or lots of vultures, if you get what I mean. Get a gun. I have a sprouter to grow microgreens. Will it operate with solar panels? For now, yeah. After this event, no. The solar panels are going to get fried. Although the sun will still work. Might just want to use the sun to grow things. Friends and family think I'm nuts when I preach about the upcoming disaster. Yeah, you are in a big club here right now, buddy. I stopped even trying to talk to my sister about most of this. My parents are super kind, but they're blind on it as well. Blissfully Lala. That was a pretty message you sent. Thank you. Anita, I know. Isn't this shirt awesome? He was a conspiracy theorist too. Who was it that just said that a minute ago? FH. Whoever just said that family thinks they're nuts. We're talking about the upcoming disaster. Yeah, they said the same thing about this guy too. I really do like these live chats. I love you guys a lot. A risk. I don't know what you're just going to type maybe 1,000 times. I'm not going to lie to you. When I don't know the answer, I have said I don't know the answer. If the answer is maybe, my answer is maybe. I'm never going to lie to you about this stuff. I'm going to do the very best I can. Some people, I don't know the answers to their questions. Some people, I definitely know the answers to their questions. That is the long and the short of that one. Do I know the EMP doctor? His name is Dr. Arthur Bradley. Opinions. I don't know who that is. It's a very interesting title. If he's the guy who made EMP Shield, I don't know. I don't trust that thing. But I will look him up. Not right now, but I will look him up. What do I think about Douglas Voigt's timeline? 1, watch the playlist. 2, he's mentioned me and I've mentioned him like 8 different times. I do not support the way that he uses interpretations of scripture to come to his end date. Yes, it could be 2046. Just as easily could be 2030 or 2039 or 2049. Douglas Vogt, and by the way, there's no H in his name. He's correct about the sun having a nova level event, for sure. But he and I have very significant disagreements. I don't want to say a whole lot negative about him. I have, he came to our 2019 conference, very nice guy, but we have some very significant disagreements about what is going to happen to the Earth, the power of the nova level event, how you survive, and how you determine when it's all going to happen. He's got it more right than a lot of people, though, that's for sure. Ben, your morning shows are around 3 to 4 minutes. Can you tell folks how much time is involved for you to produce? I spend about 1 to 3 hours reading papers and scientific news the night before. And then I get up and I spend about an hour or 2 looking at every single satellite that's available. And then it takes me about an hour or 2 to put everything together, narrate it, edit it all together, and post it. So I would say a total of about anywhere from 4 to 6.5 hours to do a morning show of 3 to 4 minutes. On Saturdays, I spend a lot of time reading journals. I probably spend 3 or 4 extra hours reading journals. But that's because I just don't want to do it every single day, and I usually have more time on the weekends. Hello again, Ralph. 1989 Quebec. I remember that. I couldn't find the video on it, but was it you that said about the ground or rock? What was it I said about the ground or rock? So if you look up ground magnetic anomaly, I know Noah's got a good thing on this. And there's no way to know, like, one CME could hit the positive anomalies harder, one could hit the negative anomalies harder. In general, magnetic latitude, the closer you are to the poles, the more susceptible you are to space weather impact. If you are right on a line between a strong positive and a strong negative, yes, you are probably even more vulnerable than other areas at your magnetic latitude. But not to the point where, population density, electric grid density isn't more of a factor. And so, Chicago, New York, they will lose power from a solar blast for rural areas in Canada that are hundreds of miles north of them. But those rural parts of Canada will lose power before rural areas in Iowa, Indiana, Pennsylvania, things like that. The Appalachians seem to love induced current. Ralph, very good question. Starlight, what age do I tell my kids and what I know? What would you do, Ben? I do tell them the power is going to go out at some point and I get the eye roll. I don't know what you tell your kids. I'm dreading coming up against this when my kids are a little bit older. Dreading it. And I don't even know where to tell you to get good advice for this either. It's a brutal situation, and I'm not looking forward to it in my own life at all. Tina says, I live on 14,000 acre cattle ranch in the Elkhead Mont near Slater, Colorado. Do you have any resources that might help me locate a cave in the area? Walking around. looking. There are probably some maps that talk about local. You might even just want to ask a local geologist, something like that. Um, I haven't gone through that process for other areas of Colorado. I did go through that process for the ranch, and then we just went out and started looking for stuff. And we realized that we didn't have to look very hard at all. I recommend getting out there and just looking. What will the max capacity be for your ranch? Everyone who's involved with it before the disaster. Put it that way. It's not like when the disaster comes, you have to say, oh, I have to be the first one there. No. When the disaster comes, we are closed. And will not look kindly upon trespassers. I let go of trying to wake anybody up. Yeah. Aside from prepping, I'm living my days with these folks by treasuring every moment. Yes, Stone. You are very welcome. That's a good mental attitude to have. Is the new Valley of the Sun going to have bunkers? The new Valley of the Sun's like 1,000 miles long, and there's a lot of bunkers there already. I presume you mean Observer Ranch. The answer is yes, but again, don't just show up and think you're going to get in that bunker after the things start going sideways. You want to be part of the ranch, look below the video, click one of those links or use that email, see what you can do now. Otherwise, don't go walking into a lion's den drenched in blood. When you refer to biblical characters like Noah, does that mean you believe in the word of God biblically? If not, what is your view of creation? First of all, what I personally believe should have absolutely no bearing on any of this. I will tell you this. When I was in college, when I was studying law, I was moving towards atheism. And when I studied subatomic particle physics, when I studied astronomy at the largest scales, and when I've studied comparatively religion, mythology, geophysics, astrophysics, paleo science, things like that, I know that this place is not some random occurrence of gravity and collisions and chaos. We are in something that is engineered. And I'm smart enough to know that that's about all I can know. And I believe it. This place is engineered. Definitely engineered. It's amazing. We've been doing this for 90 minutes and the chat is still just scrolling. Check Dean's question, Ben. I don't know what that means. Who is Dean? Where is Dean? Do I think the ice sheets will move much like the oceans will? Maybe. It's very possible. Too spicy. Won't Colorado be under an ice sheet in the future, per Robert Felix? No. The world is not tilting the same way it did last time. Nothing will be as it was last time. Things are going in other directions. Is there any way to preserve the playlist for the next 12,000 year cycle? No, not unless you can also preserve everybody's computer and the internet and everything that would go along with that. Chisel it into stone, maybe. One of the easiest ways to do it is to just save my book. It'd be cheaper than all the other options too, by the way. All right, maybe we'll get a couple more questions and then probably going to have to go get my little one from preschool. Yes, you could buy the book, or you could just watch the playlist and take notes. The playlist is free. Engineered by who? And why the faulty nature of the system? What faults? I don't see any faults. I know if I was going to engineer something where species were going to grow and evolve, I certainly wouldn't make it a perfect thing with no problems. What's the fault with math? Do you see the catastrophe cycle as a fault? I don't. See it as a test, a necessary one. Engineered by who? Fine, I'll say it. Something like God. You got something to say about that? I bet I'm better at subatomic physics and astronomy than you are, and I have seen too much to think that this place is random and not engineered. But if you think you're better at geophysics, astrophysics, cosmology, and all those other things than I am, and you want to take me on with that, please feel free to send me an email. Yeah, Reno, I know. I think Jeff Bezos is going to survive too. Any opinion on Artemis 1? No. I have very few opinions on a lot of the crap they're doing right now. By the way, Reno, Bezos' biggest problem is the fact that I've heard he's got a ton of people hired as like security for when this happens. I see no cause for them not to just shoot him immediately afterwards. Like, what makes this guy think that he's just going to be king and he's going to be able to command all these people in the disaster? It's a huge difference with the ranch. Nobody's in charge. We all are contributing. We all recognize that we need each other, things like that. Scott, you're very welcome. We're trying here. Do I think the planetary alignments that will occur in October 24 and that has not happened since 79 AD will cause new energy? First of all, that is not the case. There's nothing that's going to happen in October 2024 that hasn't happened in 2,000 years. It's just not true. The planetary alignments pretty much are on a 200 to 400 year cycle at maximum. And planetary geometry has an effect, but not that huge of one. Don't forget, I spent a decade doing the planetary geometry on suspiciousobservers.org. I did deep dives into the study of it for some of the books, the original 2015 book, Observing the Frontier. There's a limit to how influential it is. And the people saying that what's going to happen in October 2024 hasn't happened since 79 AD, I have no idea what makes them think that, or if they're just straight up lying, but it's false. It is not true. I'm in the UK and money location issues. I think I'm screwed. Thanks for all you do. Best of luck to those in the screwed group. Best of luck to you indeed. Fate will shine on the unexpected. Pete Benson asks, where's my pendant? I took it off to get in the shower, and when I came out, my wife was like, I'm taking the kids somewhere. And so I literally just grabbed my computer and jumped on here as fast as I could. But I absolutely love the pendant. Good question, Pete. In fact, as soon as I jump off this, one of the first things I'm going to do is go downstairs and put it back on. Hello again, Paul. I wish I was in the States. I would be there with you, brother. You hold up over there. I'll be fighting over here. Be fighting over there and be loving over there. By the way, for those who don't know, Pete Benson, there's the guy who made that awesome pendant that I have. And honestly, I literally just took off to get in the shower, came out, the opportunity to jump on a live stream was there, and I took it. Absolutely fantastic stuff there. Feel free to post the link to your website there in the chat like 100 different times if you want to, buddy. Just keep posting it there for anybody who wants it. I do highly recommend that pendant. FRTR is fake. I don't know what that means. I like the idea of testing humanity. Me too. Did I miss one here? No, I don't think I did. Terrorize. I don't love almost everywhere in Europe. Portugal, right on the Atlantic Ocean. Yikes. That level of population density. Yikes. That magnetic latitude. Yikes. Any links to possible maps if the crust flips to the new poles, as you asked like 10 different times, Taylor? You could just watch the playlist. That map is also in the book, by the way. Man. Portugal is on a plateau, is it not? It's also right on the Atlantic. That plateau isn't going to help it at all. It's not going to withstand the ocean and all of its inertia. Not even close. Hello, Stormy. I see you are hard at work. Much appreciated. Oh, hey, thing. Did you guys know I've made something of a playlist, a video playlist? You don't even have to read anything. You don't have to go buy anything. It's free. Down there below the video, it's this list I have compiled of informational videos about all of the we've just been talking about for the last 100 minutes. Organized, easy to understand. Do you know this thing exists? It does. It exists. Go watch it. Do I know of Nassim Haramein? Art Crystals, Taurus Tech. Yes, yes, and yes. Nassim and I were on the panel that will never be recreated. 2015 Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles. George Norrie moderated. It was me, Nassim, Greg Braden, David Wilcock, and one other I can't remember at this time. But it was phenomenal. It wasn't my most fun moment of the whole thing, by the way. My most fun moment of the whole thing was when I gave my talk about chemtrails and how we needed to get our minds right and, know what was real in the geoengineering world and what wasn't. Someone stood up in the back and started clapping. It was Michael Murphy, the guy who made What in the World Are They Spraying and Why in the World Are They Spraying? That's about as much of a confirmation that you're on the right track as there is. I'm at 12,000 feet sea level in lower Michigan. Your thoughts on surviving the next 6 to 8 years? What are your thoughts on staying connected or reaching a site after a solar hit? Nobody's going anywhere. There's not going to be travel after this. It's just not going to happen. Surviving the next 6 to 8 years, a lot of that depends on what the sun does. A lot of that depends on what the global elites and the governments do. If you're in lower Michigan, you're not right next to the lake. You're not too close to one of the populated areas, and you can handle the cold if there's no power. I say rock on, brother. It's a lot of ifs, but rock on. Ben, I'm a diesel mechanic, and majority of diesels out there are mechanical. Are you going to be using those to run any pulley systems or water pumps or any needed infrastructure? The short answer is yes. I don't want to get into too much giving stuff away, especially because some things are getting hard to find. And if there's one out there, I want to buy it. But there are some specific things out there, and Rocky's really helpful with this, by the way. Yes, things like that are your best bet when it comes to technology mechanistically after the disaster. Very, very solid comment. What elevations might be high enough to possibly escape the Pacific's wrath along the West Coast? Like right on the West Coast? None. None. Especially if the land goes down. which is very possible along that fault line. Get off the coast. Don't be anywhere near the coast. Any coast. It goes for lakes as well. Rock Duck. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Our cabin in the woods says steam engines. Another good idea. Look at how many people are like, what about this area? What about this area? What about this area? What is my date of birth? October 21, 1984. Nearest airport to observe a ranch? Colorado Springs. Nearest major one, anyway. You could try to land at Fort Carson. It might not go so well for you. But does upstate South Carolina have a chance? No. The Atlantic is going to attack like crazy. Sean, I'm glad you like my reactions to people. It's fun. Really? Somebody also have my birthday? Although with like 10 million of you in the comments, I suppose one of you is bound to have my birthday. Really shouldn't be surprised, should I? Michael Scallion map. That was asked on the first Q&A I did. Some of the things are okay. There are other things that don't make sense with it. Do I think the government's dumbs, the underground military bases, will be flooded? Some will be flooded. Some will be covered in mud. Others will be crushed by the global earthquake. Not where I would be. A couple feet of earth over your head is all you need. Tibet, question mark. If only there was some kind of playlist full of videos that somebody curated with all this information. Ashley M., you just asked if upstate South Carolina has a chance, and I said, the Atlantic will attack. Best place to be is not in outer space, terrorize. That's going to be a little scary. Little scary. Yeah, a dome house with about 2 feet of earth over it sounds good. Again, as long as you're doing it in the right place, like far away from a beach. What about the electrical venomous male platypus? Kira, are you on the right video? How many meters of earth above the head is minimum? Less than 1. You don't need that much above your head. Elevation's more important. Eric, Albuquerque is a great place provided you're not in the populated aspect of Albuquerque. You need to get out of the city. But that area in general. Hardnack Farms. Is Oklahoma at risk, and for what? Watch the playlist. Upstate South Carolina have a chance. Are you still asking me this? I swear, they're not even trying to listen. Like, Ashley's typing this question over and over again so fast, she has no idea. I have directly addressed her several times already. Guys, stop asking about places. Read the books or watch the playlist. Then apply what you have learned. Stop asking me about questions. We're not doing that anymore. Can I catch tuna in Kansas? Yeah, sure. Why not? Ben, people have become lazy. No kidding. Holy cow. This is fun to watch, though. This is fun to watch. And I'll tell you what, lazy is better than evil, controlling, and satanic. Like the people who want us to eat the bugs and own nothing and be happy. Thank you, Bob. How far of a slosh effect do I see in the Great Lakes? I live 200 kilometers away. No, you're probably not going to get slosh, but if you live close to the Great Lakes, can you survive the cold? Are you near a populated area? Do you have adequate supplies? Do you have guns? Starting to get the picture here? It's a lot of the same answers over and over. Don't mind repeating some of them. What will it cost to be a part of your ranch after this? Again, after this, there is no you becoming a part of the ranch. If you want to know about becoming a part of the ranch now, look below the video in the description box. Any idea on date and location of Tampa yet? No, I want to get this Blitz tour scheduled out as fast as I can. We have some things, we have some other things we are doing that are ranch related that are taking precedent above scheduling this Blitz tour at the moment, but soon. I suggest the foothills of the Rockies, says Ricky. Or Ricky. Is that Ricky or Ricky? Ricky? Ricky, yeah. Yes, the foothills of the Rockies. Also known as the New Valley of the Sun. Who do I need most on the ranch? Surgeon or a gardener? Probably not a surgeon, although they would be kind of helpful to have. Most important things are having an able body or an able mind, preferably both, but one of those can make you exceptionally valuable. That and not being lazy, having a good work ethic, things like that. Is there a portion of West Tennessee that could possibly uplift when Eastern Arkansas sinks? The entire center of the country is going down. That's one of the most likely places with this. It's interesting. Every single future map of the world that's out there, even though they're all different and have different things, they all show the center of the United States underwater. It's not from sea level rise. It's because as the Gulf of Mexico sloshes up there, it pushes down. It's called isostatic readjustment. I realize you guys hate this and you're looking for any kind of sign that where you live there in Tennessee or near the Ozarks or Oklahoma is going to be good. It's just not so. Square up with it and move forward. Either do nothing or make a plan. But stop looking for magic where there is none. Subcoder. I will not use Discord. I'm not going to disavow you making a Discord server for the community. But I mean, I personally don't like Discord. I find it to be unnecessarily complex and ridiculous. But I mean, you want to put the link in, you're more than welcome to. I consider myself aware of it. I approve of you trying to reach out to other people. Me officially endorsing something is another story because that comes with a lot of other aspects and responsibility. Has humanity reached its peak stupidity yet, or do we need to try harder? I wish we'd reach peak stupidity, but it's just not so. Things are going to be getting a lot worse. Yeah. All right, guys, I think we'll call it there because it's been a fun 2 hours. No, this isn't supposed to be easy. Yes, you are going to be treated like this guy if you go out and try to talk to people. And then one day it'll start raining, literally or metaphorically. And then you won't be able to get those people out of your inbox and your DMs and your text messages. They'll see a news article of something and it'll click for them. Or there'll be some kind of disaster and then it'll click for them. Fun day to be Noah. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. This was a lot of fun. I'll see you in the morning for the daily show. Be safe, everyone.